Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Aminah McCloud, and today we're going to just travel down some avenues that we don't often travel, and it's really our fault. Lots of the younger generation of scholars and activists and artists are doing some new and exciting things. So I thought I would spend today catching up with them and talking some about the Black Psychologist Intensive Program. First, I have Sophia Cheatham. Sophia is a Baltimore based social, I got to ask her what this is, social practice artist. She's a researcher, digital storyteller. I love that. Arts educator and an Afro futurist. Second, whoops, I have Dr. Rasul Miller, who is who took himself from the East Coast at Yale to the sunny skies of California at UC Irvine. He's an assistant professor of history at the University of California, Irvine. He researches Black Muslim communities, uh, especially in the Atlantic world, Black radicalism and its impact on social and cultural movements in the 20th century. Since I have both of them on, I'm going to give my salams again to both of you. It is such an honor and a pleasure, and now you all can tell me all the stuff I don't know. So let's start with Sophia. Tell me a little bit about your past, present, and future projects. We may have to come back to this a couple of times as we move along here. But first, tell me about what started you, because everywhere I looked on your resume was digital this, digital that, digital the other. And then I looked and said, oh my gosh, she's got a Master of Fine Arts in digital stuff.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Aminah. Thank you for having me today. I actually didn't always want to be an artist. When I was in high school, I wanted to be an architect. And it really just came down to money. So it was between being an architect and going to school for filmmaking, and I was really interested in both. And I chose filmmaking, and that started
Mm,
me on this trajectory of digital arts making. And while I did that, I did things like graphic design and interactive arts. And so when I finished undergrad, I realized that I actually wanted to be in the museum, and that's why I got a Master's of Fine Arts. But I really enjoy digital storytelling. So one of my past projects is a podcast called Obsidian, and it is
say it again. What's the name?
Obsidian, Obsidian podcast, and it tells
Obselian.
Obsidian, like the
Oh, I know that word.
yeah, black stone. It's
Hmm.
used in the sci-fi realm as like a portal, so people will have like an obsidian mirror and look through it and see like the future or see like another space. So
Scary.
yeah, so it has that rep in the sci-fi world, but it's also like a stone, and it's made from lava. But the podcast is based in Afrofuturism, so we write short stories and cast people to play roles. So like radio shows of like the 60s ish uh, time period, and that is a project that really encompasses a lot of my interests in digital storytelling. So working with community and working with just tech. And some of my future projects include a artist residency that I'll be starting next month, inshallah, and that will be you also community based, which is the phrase social practice artist that you mentioned earlier. So that just means
What
working
is
in
a
community.
social practice artist?
it means your art practice is based in community, so it's a social practice, and it may not have a physical result like something on the wall, but it has maybe like a facilitation or something that's interactive.
Oh,
So
I
it
see. I see.
encompasses,
Mm.
yeah, it encompasses like just engagement, and that is what I'm very interested in.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so
I
that's what
think a
my
lot of us need that with the pandemic. I,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
can't draw a lick, but I definitely need something else to do.
So one of my projects was I facilitated a group of my black peers, and most of them were Muslim since I have a lot of Muslim friends, but it was intended for us to gather and think about how we can implement Afrofuturism into our daily lives. And by that, I mean ways of bettering ourselves and our planet and just our country, things like that, and how we can really bring that into actionable steps in our
Mm,
lives. So um, we talked about different texts like W.E. Du Bois' "The Souls of Black Folk," and like Beyonce's work, like "Black is King," just different pop culture and also research based scholars and just blackness.
well, just a tidbit here. W.B. Du Bois' Souls of White Folks is far more interesting.
Hmm.
Mm. Okay, I haven't read that one.
Yeah, it's in a collection called Dark Water.
Mm.
Hmm.
I'll remember that and I'll read that too.
Yeah, it's not that long.
Okay.
But when you compare the two, that's an interesting endeavor.
I didn't even know that he had Souls of White Folk.
Oh yeah. That's because the catchy term is the souls of black folk. So
Mm.
everybody kind of got steered that way.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a lot to say, whether you agree or disagree with him. Dr. Rasul, what you
Yes.
up to
Assalamualaikum, Dr.
besides
Albini. How you
having
doing?
children?
Beside having children, mashallah. Beside having children, what about just being black and Muslim and kicking it? Like you, like you mentioned, I'm on the West Coast now. I'm teaching at UC Irvine. I guess now getting ready to go into my second year. Alhamdulillah. Teaching in U.S. In the history department, teaching transnational U.S. history. So it's cool because my training is in history and Africana studies and a lot of African American history, West African history, Atlantic world history. So this is a way for me to teach American history informed by a lot of that other stuff that I researched, if that makes sense. So it's cool. I was kind of surprised. Y'all gonna let me teach 20th century U.S. history with my angry black Muslim self. But anyway, um, but I guess in terms of, and first of all, let me say, Sister Sophia, I think the work you're doing is really exciting. So
Thank
I'm
you.
anxious to I'm gonna
It
check
is.
out the podcast. I just learned about your work when we were on the panel together for the kickoff for the Black Muslim Psychology Conference. But
Yeah.
now I'm geeked. So
I was so
yeah.
excited to be invited because each time I participate in something like that, I meet another Black Muslim scholar in something that I didn't even know who they were before. So,
Yeah, but
um,
you on the cutting edge tip with the Black Muslim
Absolutely.
futurism.
Absolutely.
That's ill. I'm kind of on the blurred tip too, but we'll talk about that another
mhm.
time. But in terms of I guess past, present, future projects. So um, if you're interested in if people are interested in reading some of my writings, the main place I always direct people is a really great site that my good friend Dr. Suad Abdul Khabir started called Sapelo Square. Um, it was a crew of us, so she always talks about the squad, all of us that started together. But I always kind of give her the official nod because she was the engine, she was the facilitator, the one who brought us all together. But I've done a lot of writing on that site. I really enjoy oh, someone said put it in the chat, so I'll put it in the chat in a second. But I enjoy writing in that format because it forces us to write in a digestible way, in a kind
Right.
of short, yeah, kind of short format. Like even now, I'm putting together my syllabus for this class I'm teaching in the fall, and it's so much stuff that like this is great, but this is too long. My students they gonna want to read all this. So
Exactly.
these Sapelo Square pieces are,
But see, that's when you get Sophia on board, and
yeah,
then she makes digital stuff
real
out of
talk.
the long stuff.
Right, right,
Capital
right.
Square's actually been doing an amazing job of translating their work into the social media sphere, like with the
Yeah.
little audio bites. I love
Mhm.
those.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, and in terms of current projects, future projects, right now I'm working on a book based on my dissertation research, tentatively titled Black Muslim Cosmopolitanism. It's really looking at sort of the black internationalist origins of Islam in New York City. It's a focus on black Orthodox Muslim communities because a lot of the literature that's out there. And Dr. Aldine is actually one of the first folks that I encountered who wrote a book that talked quite a bit about Black Orthodox or Black Sunni Muslims. So trying to build
But
on
I
that.
still have a serious problem with Orthodox. What is
Mm,
Orthodox?
yes, and a lot of people have been steering me away from using that term, but here's why I think I want to use that term. So when you look at the early history of Black Muslim communities that weren't down or weren't a part of the Nation of Islam or the Moorish Science Temple in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, from
Hmm.
what I've seen, they rarely call themselves Sunni because they're not really defining themselves against being Shia or anything else. It's really just, are you one of the folks that, is down with the nation, or are you one of the folks that's praying 5 times a day? And even a group like the Ahmadiyya community is in this kind of amorphous space. So a lot of the folks that I write about, that I found out were I guess for all intents and purposes Sunni Muslims, have been misidentified as being Ahmadiyya Muslims because the presumption is that the only Muslims on the scene in the 30s, 40s, 50s are Ahmadiyya. That's some people's assumption.
Right.
But anyway, the other reason why I'm leaning towards, or so far I've been using the term Orthodox, is because in the nation, when Honorable Elijah Muhammad in Message to the Black Man is critiquing these black Orthodox Muslims, he doesn't say, I'm critiquing Sunni Muslims. He says, I'm critiquing you Orthodox Muslims who are following these folks in the East and who are essentially, I think we can say, who are really concerned with this kind of old world orthodoxy. So it's a term that I think resonates more with the folks that I'm writing about. I don't use it to try to say that folks who practice other forms of Islam are heterodox or heretical. I don't really feel the need to do that in my work. We can have a conversation about theology, but that's not what I'm trying to do in writing this historical piece. But so
No,
that's yeah.
I just asked, and we're going to take a break. Questions about the use of the term Orthodox because it's a very Christian term
Mm-hmm.
where that emerges from central authority
Mm-hmm.
um, that has never been the history of Islam. But
Right.
we're going to take a break, and I'll come back and do both of you in very, very shortly. This is Dr. Aminah Al-Din for Muslim Network TV, and this is Critical Talk. Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Aminah al with Muslim Network TV and the program Critical Talk. I have the wonderful opportunity of messing with Sophia Cheatham and Dr. Russell Miller, and I say messing with because they are doing exciting things. And not only do we want to find a way to support them in their endeavors, but as um, Sophia mentioned earlier, to make sure it's just not a meet and a fly away. That we get you involved in some of the things you're doing and you get us involved as, you know, there you go, back and forth. Anyway, back to Orthodox.
Sure, sure. I mean, I'm actually glad you brought it up because this is, this is something that I actually like having an opportunity to talk with you about because I notice, yeah, a lot of people have a problem with it. I switch up 1 minute, people convince me to switch it up and start saying Sunni. The next minute I'm like, it's not really, who I'm talking about. So I don't know. It's an ongoing kind of thing. But
Well,
I
I
should,
think you
yeah.
have to be deliberate in your parsing out what Rasul wants to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everybody, myself included, doesn't wish to be called Sunni. The
Right.
history of Sunni Muslims sucks. So,
True
and the history
indeed.
of Shia Muslims is far too complicated for my very small mind. So, just being Muslim is kind of okay with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about Afro, like the hairstyle,
Yeah.
futurism,
Yes.
the hairstyle.
I mean, it's the same way you would say like Afro diasporic, so just putting,
I don't say
Afro
that either, but go ahead. I'm just messing with you.
Afro in front of futurism. Because there's different kinds of futurism, and so to specify this one, um, actually the guy who termed it is a white man. Um,
Right. So why you choose him?
I didn't choose him; he chose
Well,
us.
change it.
Let's see. Other ways that Afrofuturism is described is Black futurism. Mm, it's really the only term, but
Okay. Wait a minute. You know what? Because a white man coined it means that there are a lot of other terms.
hmm
Hmm.
And if you're talking about thoughts about the future of Black peoples in the diaspora or in majority minority states, what are you talking about?
So that has been brought up a lot, using the term Afrofuturism because it was conceived in the West, and a lot of people like for it to be all encompassing, but it does neglect often perspectives and on the continent of Africa, and so some African futurists just prefer to use the term African futurism.
Okay.
And so there are really famous or popular writers like Ininde Okorafor who have said that she's not an Afrofuturist. She's a African futurist, because it's a whole different set of beliefs and
Well,
history.
tell me about it. I'm just curious because it's named after a hairstyle.
Um, hmm. Tell you about the term
Yeah,
itself.
what is the difference between being an African futurist and an Afro futurist?
I guess the intentionality and the lived experiences of the person using it. And so, I mean, I guess I can't be an African futurist because, one, I don't have I guess, I don't want to say heritage because obviously I come from Africa somewhere, but I didn't grow up learning the proverbs, the mysticism, all of the experiences that would go into having a African futurism. And so I do say that I'm an Afrofuturist because it's something that I can more easily claim being from America and just having those experiences. Does that make sense?
I'm stuck on the word. I'll get over it,
Well,
maybe.
I can't change the word at this point.
Well, it's funny.
Words get changed all the time. But I think,
I do.
back long time before you were born, we railed against being Afro Americans named after a hairstyle. And I think
Hmm.
many will rail after a movement being named after a hairstyle.
So it's interesting
That
because I've been thinking about this lately in terms of just my own like naming does so much. So I similarly in a lot of my writings I talk about Black American Orthodox Muslims, right? And that's another term that Dr. Aldin is messing with me with. You know what I'm saying? But it's funny because I found in my writings a big part of what I think I've been interested in lately is looking at the ways in which quote unquote Black Muslims have been very interested in different forms of radical internationalism, right? So my father, who is a product of that tradition and imprinted a lot of that in me, I grew up being told you're an African, just like Malcolm said. Just because a cat
Right,
have a kid in the oven don't make them biscuits, right?
right,
Um, and so but I'm also writing about communities that are in community with Muslims from the African continent.
right.
So then recently, hanging out with Dr. Suad, virtually hanging out anyway. I was she mentioned in her Umi's archive project, she talks about the history of this term Afro American, and she actually traces it back to, and I'm so embarrassed that I'm blanking on his name, but a Caribbean, an Afro Caribbean, if you will, intellectual who's doing work in Harlem in I want to say the 40s, who sort of coins this term Afro American. So then I had a day where it was just, well, we Afro American now because I found out a black man made the term, and had all this like diaspora consciousness in
Mhm.
it. And it's so funny because these terms are so fluid, yet they're so contentious. Because there are people to this day who fight you if you call them black, or if you call them African, or if you call them
Right.
Afro. So, and for me, and I take this as an opportunity to mention this. So, a lot of my work deals with oral history, and I'm saying that because I want to let it be known that this is a sort of ongoing project that I'm working on, and I hope other people are working on as well. I know other people are working on, but I encourage people to collect oral histories. Dr. Aldine, I'm trying to come out to
Sophia
Baltimore and,
is
and
out there
interview
going
you.
hard with them. Yeah.
um, so yeah, and I always tell people when I give these, when I present or I'm talking to different audiences, go get you a tape recorder and go interview some folks from your community because that was the genesis of my work. And when I interview folks, some of the folks I interview, I mean, I really hope everybody likes the way they come out in the book, right? Some people might be like, "Why'd you call me a Black American?" I mean, I don't know, but this is the kind of minefield that I'm trying to navigate. But so yeah, the name means everything, as a man once said.
Well, I know that there has to be some synergy between the artists in our community and the academics. And there's not enough synergy, in my opinion. Whether it's uh, graffiti, I don't even, I think graffiti is pejorative, but it's some of the
Mm.
wonderful pictures on walls to helping people who are homeless have something else to do, to using the digital world as Sophia does to tell stories. You know, I mean, all of those things are so radically important, especially when professors are teaching classes. Students need to read,
Mm-hmm.
hands down, but
yeah.
it'll settle better if there's a visual component, you know. And many of the professors, especially those my age, are scared to death of technology. And you mentioned digital, and they want to go, have a stroke or something. So It is wedding it in its seamless capacity, because both are trying to describe the social space.
Mm-hmm.
And artists have been renowned for bringing communities' attention to social issues, as have academics. And like Rasul, you're saying, Sapelo Square forces you to speak in everyday language and
Right.
not ivory tower language.
Right.
Um, and all of those things we need somehow, and I'm gonna get you to do some more writing too. Um, all of those things we need. So, do you have any ideas as to how we can bring them together in a deliberate effort, not a happenstance? Like, I see the two of you in this webinar. Oh, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Let me call them up.
Mm.
How can we do that?
Well, I think my program did a good job of being academic and artistic. Since it's a master's program, it was a lot of reading as well, a
Hmm.
fair amount of research. And, we got off the hook with having to write a shorter thesis than most people because we had an exhibition of artwork as well. But, my even though it's only 5,000 words, my thesis is 50 pages of
Mm.
work because there's artwork included in,
Right.
it's a picture book basically. But I've also been thinking about how to make my thesis writing a little more digestible because I I feel like I'm super interested in what I wrote about and I want other people to read it as well. But when they open up this 50-page document, they're like, ooh, don't know if I want to read that. But it's super easy, in my opinion. I don't think
Pages? Oh my God.
it's
That's the
double
thing. In
spaced.
the world of academia, I
Ex-
mean, all of us should have read it.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's double
We
spaced.
tackle 300-page books on a daily basis. We
Yeah.
should have read this, passed it along, heralded, done all of those good things.
Yeah.
Well, please, I would love to
Shoot.
send it to you. I
Oh,
will.
She's-
I'm down the road from you.
I could. I was gonna say I'll bring you a physical copy. I don't even have a physical copy, but I would love for you to read it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you too, Dr. Rasul.
yeah, please. I'd love to read it. I'm ready. I'm
It's
ready, and I'm
actually
and I'm actually
called.
gonna read 50 pages means I'll actually read it. No promises about those 300-page
Yeah,
works.
no, I
Dr.
read
D was
Um,
talking about.
it.
you know, um,
Yeah.
I'm an editor for Brill,
Mm,
and one of the things that has annoyed me past my breaking point is the fact that African American Muslims are not writing.
mm,
I don't get to herald their manuscript to my editorial team, and others are writing about African American Muslims,
mm-hmm.
as has been the case forever. It's really annoying.
Yeah. To that point, I mean, maybe I don't want to throw shade at nobody. I ain't trying to talk bad at nobody, but I know one of the things that made me want to write this book and start this research, which is now turning into a book, inshallah, is that exact fact. I was reading stuff about my community by folks who weren't from the community, and
Exactly.
and
Didn't know a thing.
didn't know a thing. I mean, people, clearly tried their best,
Yeah.
but our communities have good reason to be suspicious of who we give our stories to. So, even just in doing my dissertation research, it became clear. Like, I had this amazing archive because people were willing to tell me their story. Some because they knew me. Some when I tell them about my dad. Where was your dad? Oh, he was in the nation. He was in this. Okay, we'll give you. You know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
but I think you're absolutely right, and I hope people are. I get the sense that we are, but I hope more people are like taking up the call. Like more people are, in within the next 5 to 10 years, Dr. Dean should have a whole lot of manuscripts coming
To
across our
read.
desk,
That's
written
why
by
I was
us.
so excited to read Dr. Suad's Muslim Cool because when I read it,
Mm,
I was like, it's like I wrote this. Like these are my experiences.
Exactly.
Of course, she was way more eloquent and, profound than I could be at this point in my life. But I was like, whoa, she's like my little therapist. I'm reading in this book. I was like, I wish I could have a Black Muslim woman mentor. And that's what reading that book felt like. But I will say that I have a really good friend named Vanessa Taylor who is she writes less academically, more for public. What do you call when you write for magazines? Editorially, maybe? I don't know. But she writes for online magazines, and
Mhm.
she opened this Black Muslim literary space online called the Drinking Gourd, based on I think the Drinking Gourd is has a connection to a trail that enslaved people used to escape. I think that's where the name comes from. But basically,
Mhm.
I see a lot of fiction writing. I don't see a lot of nonfiction writing in it,
Right.
but it is a good resource to see young Black Muslims writing, and I really appreciate that space. And there's a whole team. There's not just her. There's maybe 5 other people who help run that site, and it's on Medium. So I will send you that resource as well.
Please. We're going to take another quickie. And when I come back, I want you to recapture, if you can. I know your memories are short. What you talked about in the webinar and what you are going to help the intensive be about, because that's very important. And I think many folk don't listen enough to you guys. Um, so there we go. This is Dr. Aminah from Muslim Network TV, and this is Critical Talk. And I'm here with Sophia Cheatham and Rasul Miller, and I'm having a ball. They probably aren't, but I'm having a ball. We'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Amina Al-Din, and I'm having a wonderful talk. I don't know whether I'm in Orthodox Muslims, Afro, Futuristic, something or the other, but with Sophia Cheatham and Rasul Miller, and I'm learning a lot. And most of what I hear is not confusion, but wanting on one hand to bring stuff together, on the other hand to story tell a more accurate history, um, to bring the digital world to the world of academia and vice versa. So tell everybody about the webinar that I was surprised at how good you all were. I mean, I really learned stuff, and I also learned what we hadn't shared with you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, when I was there, I was like, I wish I was more chatty, but I think, the chattiness comes with life experience, and I was the youngest person on the panel, but I'm not very
Don't
talkative.
brag. Don't brag.
I
Mhm.
wasn't bragging. I was just like, I wish I had more to say because, everyone had so much, you know, uh, insight and, things that they could talk about with
What you
Dr.
said was powerful though. What you said was powerful. I kind of looked at. I don't mean to cut you off, but I kind of look at it as sometimes the person who's the quietest is the person who has the most useful stuff to say, and when they do talk, you
I was
listen.
just
So
taking everything in. I was absorbing it all. Um, and, I was like, I don't want to take up too much time when I was what's that? Enjoying what you guys are talking about. But we talked a lot about freedom dreams, and Dr. Camila Rashad had so many great questions about you know how we envisioned that and what were some actionable steps that we were taking to make those come true. Um, do you have anything you want to share before we go more in depth, Russell, Dr. Russell?
Um, I mean, yeah. Well, yeah. I'm trying to remember. What we talked about so long ago, just a few days.
Yeah,
Um,
What's
but
last week?
well, I mean, the theme of the Black Muslim Psychology Conference this year is Black Muslim Freedom Dreams, and I think a lot of Dr. Camilla's questions were centered around, and as a result, our comments were centered around one, the importance of dreaming, envisioning a better future, giving ourselves permission to do that. I think when you are steeped in struggle, whether that be just struggle to survive, under attack in this place, as a lot of us are, or struggling to do something about that, even if you have, some relative privilege.
hmm
I think it becomes you sort of forget to be involved in dreaming about what could be because you're so used to trying to play defense and protect your people and protect yourself from what's happening to you. So I think that was a really good aspect of it. And I remember what I said to one question, which was just sort of, what does Black Muslim Freedom Dreams mean to you? And I know for me, I remember making a comment that I'll restate because I think that's what Dr. Dean might want us to do. That a lot of it has to do with building power. The first part is always being, involved in dreaming of a better future. And the title, of course, comes from Robin D.G. Kelly's book, Freedom Dreams, which is an awesome work, which I think really highlights the way that so much of what has come out of the Black radical tradition has been animated by this ability to dream, imagine, think of a better world, think of alternatives, think of what we want the world to be, we want the end to be, so we can figure out how to get there. And I'm big on that. And then for me, the other part of it is then building power, figuring out how or amassing the ability to be self-determined enough to create communities that look the way we want them to look. In an era where that's not really what I think a lot of us are steered toward doing. I think we're steered toward um, going along to get along or figuring out how to eke out just enough of whatever somebody else is willing to give us to, be kind of sort of happy or fulfilled, as opposed to that kind of ambitious, audacious, radical stance of, let me
So what
take.
happened? That's not what we willed you guys.
Mm.
Well, there were people who saw what y'all were doing and didn't like it, so they launched their response. So and I,
That's
and To that point, I feel like I'm talking too much, but I'll say part of what motivated me to want to do this work of collecting oral histories and writing histories of our communities was um, preserving that, because I think in many ways those of us who exhibited the most radical imagination, those are the folks that are, locked up, killed. I mean, we talk about the Black Muslim community, when we talk about our Black Muslim heroes, so many of the folks, like, we all love Malcolm. We all claim Malcolm's legacy. But when I think about the people who really could lay claim to Malcolm's legacy, I think about people like Mutulu Shakur, who's incarcerated, like Babu Sekou Odinga, who just recently came home, like Sister Sophia Bakari, your namesake, who was incarcerated and has returned to Allah. I think about people like that.
For her book, literally, like right before I got here, the war before, I was looking for
Yeah,
that at
I have it
the.
on my bookshelf here too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they said they have to order it from me. I was at this African bookstore called Everyone's Place. But I was gonna say, yep, what you just said was a really big takeaway that I took was, the people who are the most marginalized or most maybe not conflicted, but in the most conflicting circumstances, have the biggest freedom dreams. And addressing Camila's question about, do we have time or do we have permission to dream?
Yeah, for sure.
That's very interesting because I think, and I'm trying to think way, 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 way back. I don't know necessarily that many of us were doing more than trying to get somebody off our backs,
Mm.
simultaneously trying to bring the Muslim community together. And myself, like Dr. Suad's mom, we didn't see a breach between the Panther Party and being Muslim, but you all have had it too easy.
It's true.
I mean, so easy that I'm not sure who you sound like.
What you mean?
I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I watch people die beside me.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us have been shot.
Mm-hmm.
You all sit back in very comfortable quarters talking about dreaming and Afro, future something or the other.
Thank you for your service. We are
Oh,
reaping the benefits of
and
your
guess what we did?
sacrifice.
It was almost as if, okay, well, you all did that, and we'll record it, and we'll thank you for your service, and we're going to go on our happy way in another direction. Um, so I'm listening.
I
Well,
love to pay respect to my elders and ancestors and people who are still alive who really did all of the hard work so I don't have to.
No, but if you're black in America, the work never stops.
well,
Exactly.
I say this. So, and I guess this is finishing the point I started before. Part of the reason I wanted to capture some of these stories, and for this first book, I'm really trying to tell stories of Black Muslim communities in and around New York City that I think were very radical in their thinking, and they all kind of not only imagined but made into a reality their own kind of freedom dream, whether it's the Darul Islam movement or Sheikh Dawood and Mother Khadija's community or Fes Manazuddin or Moscow Brotherhood, all of that, right? But I've started already doing research for a future project looking specifically at Muslims who are involved in Black radical political formations like the Panther Party, like the Revolutionary Action Movement, Republic of New Africa. And for me, the goal is to make my folks in my age and younger radical again. I want to see Islam become radical again. Not, okay, now we Muslim and now let's pontificate about stuff that happened in the 13th century and don't say radical because they're going to come get you. I'm like, nah, if they ain't coming to get you, then. And to your point, Dr. Aldine, I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm doing something wrong because they ain't tried to come get me yet. But until they try to come get me,
Well,
I'm going to be out here,
they got on their radar.
Say again?
They have you on their radar. We were laughing the other day talking about how all of us had posts so that the police coming in black neighborhoods to wantonly arrest folks couldn't do it because we were all there
Right.
and watching. We
Right.
didn't have all the sophisticated equipment and smartphones, but we did a job. Now you young people have all this stuff that you come to learn to love, and you don't do anything. You know, the Black Lives Matter movement. No, what was the first one? 99%? No, was it?
Well, Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah. And a lot of my students said, well, the school says we can't go out and protest. And I said, well, I think I'm canceling class for the day. So
Mm.
you see what you can do. I'll cook.
Mm.
I'm not protesting anything else. But then the Black Lives Matter movement, I expected to see Muslims leading the movement, but that was too much work.
Mm.
You know,
I
they didn't
don't
want to
know.
get dirty. They didn't want to get run the risk of harm.
I wouldn't say, I don't know if we weren't, Black Muslims weren't at the forefront, but maybe we weren't invited to that space. But
Hmm.
that's an interesting point because I know a lot of grassroots type of organizations that do things locally, but you're right about, the national scale. Black Muslims were not, at the forefront of the Black Lives Matter movements, but there is a lot of politics I feel like that went into that whole
Hmm.
Black Lives Matter movement. It's a lot that, is based in money and based in who's got the biggest following or network, like who's going to make the most noise, being at the forefront of this. And I don't know. I don't know if we can discount Black Muslims as not doing anything yet. Um, I've seen
Well,
pretty
I'm
cool
talking
things
about
happen.
yet. I don't know. This summer's passed. Haven't seen them do anything. But I think that
Art
that's a
is
conversation.
radical, I would
Yes,
say.
absolutely.
Art
Absolutely.
making is changing. What do they say? Tony K. Bambara said the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible.
Mm.
And,
Absolutely.
that is what I
Did
strive
you
to
send me
do.
that on a t-shirt?
Am I
No, but
there
I'm
yet?
serious. This is a very serious conversation. So
Mm.
I'm going to take up some more of you all's time in the
Please.
future and see who else I can have, not to beat you up like me, but to discuss the possibilities because I was ready this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happened
I
except
was
more
ready
police
too.
shootings, you
I
know.
was ready to stop paying my rent
Yeah.
collectively, and nobody did
well,
it.
well, you know
But
what? You know what, Dr. Adine,
nothing.
can I offer something that it's not an answer. I wish I had an answer, but something to think about. Well, two things I share. One, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who told me about a conversation they had had with Professor Muhammad Ahmed, who folks might know also as Max Stanford, one of the founders of the Revolutionary Action Movement. And and he's somebody who did the work, right? And
Mhm.
he was sitting down with his elder, speaking, and Professor Muhammad Ahmed said to the young brother, he said, the young brother was asking something like, when is it going to happen? And Professor Muhammad Ahmed said, well, look at us. We're sitting here in this nice little coffee shop, eating our
Uh-huh.
nice little sandwiches. He says, it's too comfortable.
Yeah.
These are not the circumstances that are right for revolution, right? So it
But
might
that's
have to
it.
get worse, and it's getting worse.
It
So maybe it
is.
just hasn't gotten
Because
to
there's
that point yet.
no, I mean, we had all night meetings.
Mm,
Many of us had little kids. We drugged those little kids to the meetings with us,
mm,
and everybody got to do the bouncy on the knee. But now it's, uh, people have created these sanctuaries
yeah.
or something. But we have to end our Critical Talk program now, but I will be back to both of you.
Okay,
This is,
I'm with it.
this is
I
Dr.
would love to
Aminah.
learn from you how I can be more radical in actionable ways.
You can be actionable in bringing me that darn dissertation. This is
Okay.
Dr. Amina Aldeen for Muslim Network TV, and this has been the show Critical Talk. Please stay on.